Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited. Number one, it's my birthday. I forgot to tell you that, Dr. Phillips.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And number two, I'm joined by our new provost at National Louis University, and I am just so very excited that he was able to take the time out of his what must be an amazingly busy schedule to talk to me briefly today just about his journey in education and some of the hopes that he has for his new role. So welcome, Dr. Phillips.
Thanks for having me, Gloria. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you. Okay, so first, I always ask people to just tell us a little bit about your story, your journey in education. I don't even know if you started as a teacher or like, how did you end up here?
You know, it's interesting. So I'm born and raised south side of Chicago native. And my entry into education and higher education was really serendipitous. I always wanted to go to law school, and as I was finishing my bachelor's degree, I had prepared and taken the LSAT and had started applying for law schools, and had got accepted into a few. And a mentor of mine who was working in residential life at Northern Illinois University, which is where I was attending school at the time, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I think you'd be really great working in residential life. And we have a grad assistantship available for you." So this was nearly 20 years ago. I started this 2-year grad assistantship at NIU, working in residential life, working with students, and I fell in love with the work. I never looked back since. And so from that moment of, this mentor, seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself was kind of my entry point into higher education. And from that grad assistantship forward, I found myself working at community colleges, working at academic medical centers, now working here at National Louis, a private nonprofit institution. And along the way, I've really just gained a deep appreciation for what higher education means and what it can do for specifically underserved, underrepresented populations of students, really education being this transformative tool that can catalyze change and really create equity and create real positive impact in the lives of, students of color and their families and their communities. And so that's been part of my life's work. I spent about 14 years in a community college setting with the city colleges of Chicago, specifically working with a lot of underserved, marginalized student populations and working with several grants that were really intended to create some equity around student outcomes and also just putting students on a path to experience and really positive economic mobility. Along the way, I started, having this itch to teach. My academic background, my undergrad and grad degrees are in sociology with a criminology emphasis. So I started teaching, as an adjunct with the city colleges of Chicago and started doing tons of guest lectures and other courses. So sociology is my jam, it's my love. I really have always been kind of interested in understanding social conditions and how those social conditions impact different populations of people and just understanding culture and how all of those things come together, specifically in the higher ed space to make for a really diverse and rich learning experience. So I've been working in higher ed now about 20 years. And again, my life's passion is really around this kind of equity charge and really helping, all students, but certainly students of color, who come from communities like the one I came from, to really see education as a positive catalyst that could transform their lives and the lives of their families and communities.
So that you just made me think of a question that's a little bit off our script. I've only worked in urban schools in Chicago and in different places around the country. So like Inglewood, Douglas Park, Roseland, Pullman, like the areas where there seems to be the highest need, right? But it also seems to be the highest gaps in terms of opportunities. Like I visit schools in other places in Illinois, and then I visit a school where I was working that might even be 10, 15 miles away. And just the difference in the way the campus looks, the difference between the materials that they have and the materials that we have. And so sometimes it feels like these social conditions are like part of a bigger schema, like
Yeah.
part of a bigger, and it's sometimes hard. And even though, the urban legends work that I'm doing and podcasts that I'm doing is designed to tell the positive story on a larger scale, do you have any ideas for what we can do to start to address those discrepancies? Because I don't want to pour more money into something, right? I want to use it the right way, even though more funding seems to be part of the issue. But it's also like a mindset, and it's also like the types, like we get almost all brand new teachers all the time in the schools where we need teachers with the most experience. Like it just seems like it's just off. Like,
Yeah.
what have you seen, and then what ideas do you have for?
Yeah, it's a really complicated phenomenon when you think about, just some of the structural challenges that have plagued, many of the communities that, have unfortunately been heavily divested in. You see low educational attainment, you see high poverty, you see high crime. And so, some of those things I think, are by default kind of byproducts of like this really like unfair system that has been
Yes.
created, that has led to like some real severe neglect in these communities. Um, it's interesting because I'll just use the city of Chicago. In the city of Chicago, there's 77 communities or 77 neighborhoods, and most of the crime is concentrated in 15 of those 77 communities. And of those 15, 5 of those communities are where you see like the most severe kind of rates of, extreme violence and extreme crime that's concentrated. Um, and while that's true in Chicago, that same narrative is true in pretty much every other urban environment across
Right.
the nation, right? And so you have to ask yourself, like what systems, what structures have been put in place or have been removed that has created this dynamic that we see nationally. I spent 9 years working at Kennedy King College in Inglewood, and that would be one of these 5 communities that I'm
Hmm.
talking about in terms of low educational attainment, high
Hmm.
poverty, high rates of crime. And, oftentimes the students from the community, those lived experiences, those social conditions would make their way inside
Into
the
the
academic
classroom.
setting
Right.
and inside the classroom. And so a few things that we realized were really important. One, it was important for students to see people who looked like them, and who could relate to their plights. Maybe they didn't directly live those experiences of our students, but again, maybe they had a family member or a friend, someone that, kind of drew some level of connection to what students might have been experiencing in a way that, could really create some real kind of empathic, and relational connection between our students' challenges and what they were trying to accomplish as they visited and engaged in our curriculum and our program. And so that was one, is just that kind of connection through, shared identity, that was really important. The second thing I would say is, folks didn't have the luxury of time to wait to finish a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree. That just simply wasn't, in their
Exactly.
trajectory. People
Exactly.
needed, immediate stabilization of income for themselves, for their families. And so we really started thinking about and working on short-term, high
Yes.
demand industry credentials that could put a person on a path to some kind of economic stability and independence, and still work with them as they got those credentials to further their education. So really taking kind of a scaffolded approach so that, people could get stabilized, but people could continue to grow in their academic and professional journeys. The third thing was really, it was money. And I'm not saying these things in any order, but financial, support. Many students at the institutions that I was at that time, we had participated in a survey called the Real College Survey, that was sponsored by the Hope Institute. And this is a national survey that really understands, certain economic challenges that students might be experiencing, like food insecurity, homelessness, or housing insecurity. And just looking at the benchmark data, the students from our institution at that time who had participated, the college had the highest rates of homelessness reported, the highest rates of food insecurity reported, the highest rates of housing insecurity reported. And so it's kind of like, how do you support a student when they have to worry about just living, right? Like they have to just worry about how I'm going to eat, how I'm going to feed my family, where I'm
Right.
going to sleep tonight. And so it was really important to provide, some real important, kind of emotional and just life skills, supports and resources so students could be productive in the classroom. So some of that did come down to just financial support that students needed. And I think the fourth thing, was really around just kind of the policy and kind of the legislative advocacy work to make sure that institutions like those that sit in these communities are no longer divested. That the tax base is stabilized, because as you see, like residential and commercial investments disappearing, then a tax base also disappears with
Right.
it. And that's a big part of the funding source for public institutions in these communities. So the model has to change, to make sure that these schools and these communities are getting the right resources they need to support some really kind of complex and severe needs that students bring to the learning process. So those are just a few insights that I picked up on during my time working in Inglewood specifically, and working with a host of students and faculty and community organizers that were really trying to figure this out. And again, that narrative is true outside of Chicago. I mean, you can go to LA, and you can go to Boston, and you can
You can
go
go to
to
Gary,
New
Indiana. You can
York
go
or
to
Gary.
Cleveland. All the places that I've worked, I see the same narrative like repeated. But
Mhm.
I also see like these amazing teachers who care so much for kids and counselors who care so much for students that like miracles happen. But
Yeah,
like we can't depend on a few miracles here and there for large scale change.
it
There
has
has
to
to
be
be,
systematized. It
yes,
has to be. And the point that you just made about the amazing faculty, that was one of the most important ingredients to like this recipe for success was the faculty. I mean, faculty just took on a role larger than life. I mean, they became mentors and advisors and pseudo parental figures, and
yeah, they
of
do.
course, faculty who were teaching content. But students made deep connections to these faculty, and faculty made deep connections to these students. And it just made a tremendous amount of difference. So it's like, how do you replicate that
How do you
passion,
replicate that is what,
commitment?
yes,
And there's programs out there. There's one called Caring Campus, which is an initiative that we have participated in. And Caring Campus was, and it's been piloted at several community colleges in Illinois and even some universities nationally. But it's this idea of, understand it for faculty who have the highest course retention rates, the highest course success rates. Like, what is the secret ingredient that you
mm,
bring to your students' learning experience that have led to these really positive and amazing outcomes? And so we had started participating in this, and it was a qualitative study, and interviewed about 20 faculty at the institution who had really high success rates, high retention rates, despite the challenges that many students brought to their learning experience. And it was really incredible to just listen to faculty. And some of these things aren't groundbreaking. It was just, making themselves available to students outside of
yes,
class time. If a student needed help, they became a tutor, and they would provide, tutoring time with students. If students needed, assistance with transportation, they would give them a couple bucks to get to and from,
yes,
school and home. It was exercising situational fairness, knowing that students sometimes, might be 5 minutes late to class, but guess what? They made it to class. So instead
yes,
of like penalizing them for missing the 5 minutes, let's celebrate them for making the remaining 45 minutes of a 50-minute class. And it was all of these, examples that faculty were sharing. And it was not, cognitive, it was not academic. It was really just about this kind of human-centered approach that they brought to their learning process and how they approach supporting and teaching students. So it was really, really interesting. And I think if we can scale and replicate that type of
I love
mindset
that idea.
um,
Yes,
in these communities where, understandably, teachers are, taxed, under, supported, they don't have the resources. But if we could replicate that mindset, I think we could really make a huge difference in students' learning process.
I am all about trying to do this caring campus type of study and replication. I think a lot of times, I don't think that anybody goes into teaching not caring about kids.
Mhm.
But I think over time, when we work in the areas that where it's really difficult, like it becomes difficult to continue to have the same like fire that you had about it at the beginning. And then you see people who were like these amazing teachers, and they just get exhausted and they just get tired. And I think this caring campus idea, or the results that you got from that, like might be a way of like reigniting some of that. I love it. I love it. So, okay. So, provost, you are our new provost. I am really impressed. The title just sounds really cool, but I have no idea what a provost does. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you do as a provost, and then like kind of like some of your goals for your
Sure,
new
sure.
position?
In academia, we love these nebulous titles like provost. And then, it's funny because my father works at an elementary school. He's worked in K-12 his entire career. And he asked if I would show up for career day and talk to some sixth graders, seventh graders about, what I
What you
did look
do?
like. I don't know if provost will resonate with the sixth or seventh grader, if they would even
It'd be
understand
like you do what?
what that title is and what it means. And to, like it harkens back to my own kind of life and academic journey. I didn't realize that there was so many opportunities in higher education. I've never thought about higher education as a career path. And as I started to kind of get immersed in the work, my eyes were, open, and horizons started to broaden, awareness started to increase around like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing, career path for folks who want to, work with students, who value education, who want to support people towards, whatever set of personal, professional, academic goals they might have. So anyhow, provost is in my role as provost, I'm primarily responsible for a few things. One is the academic health of the institution. So that includes managing our academic portfolio, working with the deans and faculty to make sure our curriculum is relevant, that it's industry aligned, that we're meeting regulatory requirements, and that we're doing that in a very kind of evaluative, informative way. So we're always actively reinvestigating, again, the quality, the integrity, the relevancy of our curriculum. So that's a big part of kind of the provost's responsibility, is really just making sure that our academic portfolio is strong, that it's stable, and that we remain innovative. The second thing I would say is really around supporting faculty, making sure that, our faculty have the right resources they need, that we're actively engaged in professional development, that faculty are actively supported, with their research agenda and scholarly outputs and productions and things that they might be engaged in. And then I'm working with deans and program chairs to recruit top talent faculty, again, that can help elevate the profile of the institution, but certainly, the profile of specific programs and colleges. So I would say that's probably second on the list. Third is, really supporting governance throughout the institution. So we want to make sure that, academic citizenship is strong, that faculty feel like they have a voice in decision making, that staff feel like they have a voice, and not feel like they actually do have a voice in decision making and processes. So making sure that our governance structure is strong, and that it's, inclusive, and that people are actively engaged and dialoguing around strategic decisions, initiatives, or investments we might want to make. So making sure that, I can be a good kind of mediator or facilitator of those governance related activities and discussions. So I would say that's probably a third thing that's really important for the provost. Fourth is obviously financial and budgetary. So making sure that, I am working with the president and working with our CFO and working with our deans to make sure that we remain fiscally kind of solvent and responsible, and that we're demonstrating good stewardship with the resources we have. Certainly in a climate like now, where the economy is so volatile and it's really been, kind of crippled by COVID and the pandemic, just making sure that, we still demonstrate some level of financial stewardship without, diminishing or kind of diluting the quality of our academic programs and student experience. So trying to strike that right balance, I think, is an increasingly important role for the provost as we kind of continue through this pandemic, and, hopefully come out of this pandemic, in a better place. So those are kind of the four big buckets for me, is academic portfolio, faculty support, governance, engagement, and then kind of budget management and stewardship. In all of those things, I think the common thread that we always have to think about is, students. And so making
Mhm.
sure that as we make all these decisions, as we develop curriculum, as we deliver curriculum, as we engage with faculty around professional development, that we're always thinking about what the student experience should look like, and that it's, a quality, rich, a robust experience for students. So that for me is always the foundation that those four kind of buckets sit on top of. So that again, we're really, doing the work that advances our mission, advances our goals, and really, puts students on a path to success.
Awesome. Awesome. So that was a lot. And I don't know how you get all four of those kind of done at the same time. It just sounds like a lot. Um, if you were to think of one big goal or one focus area that you have, like right now, because of so many pieces, like what, like this is the one thing I've said to myself that I'm going to be working on next. What would that be?
It's really about our academic portfolio and what I call kind of academic innovation. Higher education, the value proposition of education in general has started to become questioned, right? We
Mhm.
have, students that are really starting to question the value of a degree these days.
Yes.
And so we as an institution have to evolve. We have to think about different ways in which we can, make our programs and our curriculum compelling and interesting. And a lot of that really centers around this idea of being innovative and finding new ways that we can deliver our curriculum that connects with this new audience of students and this new audience of learners that, might want to do flexible instruction where they are learning from home, or they want to do something that's competency based for the non-traditional learner that says, hey, I've been working in the industry for 20 years. You mean to tell me I have to do this 30
Right.
credit hour graduate degree? Like, can
Right.
I get credit for some of the experience I have? So thinking about those pieces, also thinking about what types of, experiences we want to create for students, both inside and outside the classroom. So low residency models where students are coming together as a cohort and doing something that's project based. It's real world, it's applied, and it's something that's tangible that they can take to the workplace when they graduate and finish our program. So that would be the one that I am really starting to think about and prioritize, is really just kind of the health and the innovation behind our academic portfolio, and really starting to think about the value proposition of what a degree means from National
Mhm.
Louis, and what kind of academic experience do we want to create that really resonates with the learning needs and the interests of, today's student.
Mm. One thing that you just made me think of um, that I've kind of been feeling is that there feels like there's fewer people seeking to become teachers just because of everything that's going on in terms of education and just how difficult it feels. And you can teach this and you can't teach that. And especially in various states, it's just becoming too much for people, school leaders as well. Like people are saying, like, I don't want to do that. And so the fact that, National Louis, your department is going to be thinking outside the box in terms of ways to further engage people is promising. It's also like really scary. Like it's a scary time in our profession. Like it used to be that people sought to become teachers. And now it doesn't feel like that to me anymore. I don't know, like, do you think there's a way we could, as an institution, like use student voice in order to be a big part of that, figuring out what the next steps could be?
Absolutely. I completely agree and believe that we need to talk with students about what they want to get out of this experience,
Mm,
and where they want to take this experience. Just in terms of my own kind of research philosophy, I think that the voices of those who inform our decision making is a valid source of knowledge, and so we have to have these conversations with students to really understand what they're looking for and how we can provide that experience that they're looking for. You're right. And I think COVID, the pandemic has really kind of ushered in like this new like moment of reckoning that we have to really start, thinking about and reacting to it, because the fatigue factor is real. The value proposition of education is real. We've, had to deal with a lot of social unrest that has started to make its way in the learning process, and thinking about, pedagogical design, and, how we make sure that, our curriculum is responsive to the diverse needs of students. That's, a lot of work, and that's uncomfortable for people. So we have all of these factors, kind of this confluence of things going on. And I think it's really just made for a really interesting conversation that we have to have with students about what this means for their experience, and ultimately what it means for them when they move into their practice of teaching themselves, and how they want to, model, some of these values, these beliefs, to the students that they're going to be teaching.
Yes.
As they finish our program. So it's a really interesting time, but I think you're right. It really starts with kind of listening to our students and understanding what they, what they're learning, and what they're hearing, and how they're feeling, and what they desire out of this process.
So you have answered all my questions. I'm so excited you were here. I'm really excited about working at National Louis. Like, I'm excited because I get to, even though I'm not a principal anymore, or not an assistant superintendent anymore, I get the opportunity to influence what happens out in the field. And the students that we have are just fired up about changing things to make them more equitable, about doing the right thing, about embracing their staff members, students, and parents, the community. Like, it feels like a new type of mindset. So if you were to sum up, as our final thought, if you were to sum up what makes National Louis the choice for people who really want to make a difference out here, what would your elevator speech sound like?
That's a good question. I would say that, number one, the institution is very much committed to this idea and practice of equity. And in today's society, and this, traverses industries, education, business, technology, that equity is like grounded and centered in the work that we do. And so for students that are looking to, join this journey with us, we're going to support students and meet students where they are, no matter where they come from. And I think that's really important, so that students really feel connected to the mission, and they feel connected to the experience, and they really start to have a sense of belonging within the institution. So this idea of really kind of equity driven, equitable focused, and approaches towards, making sure that the student experience is really the right experience for each and every student is one of the things that I get really excited about when I think about National Louis and the work that we're doing. And I would say the second thing is incredible and committed faculty and staff.
Oh yeah, there are.
I believe that faculty make the biggest difference in a student's experience. I mean, students have the most face time with faculty, and that is really where the real kind of rubber hits the road, and the engagement and the connections and that sense of belonging is fostered. And so we have incredible faculty. I've had a chance in my brief time to meet some amazing faculty who are doing amazing research, who are leaders, in their disciplines and in the field, who are committed to our student success. And I think that's what students want, and that's what students need, are, really seriously committed faculty who want nothing but the best success for our students. And so I would say kind of this equitable approach with amazing faculty and staff to support students inside and outside the classroom is what makes National Louis exciting to me. And that's why I would say in my elevator pitch, any prospective student who's having a question about where to come and why to come, NLU is the place to be.
NLU is the place to be.
Because we have incredible faculty who are going to make sure that all of our students are on a path to success.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eddie Phillips. This has been amazing, and congratulations on your new role. I can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. This has been a really good discussion. I appreciate the invitation.